This is Twisted Passages with award-winning author Marie Sutro. Now, let's take a deep dive into the dark world of psychological thrillers and meet the authors who created them.
Hello, and welcome to Twisted Passages. I'm your host, Marie Sutro, and today we have global #1 best-selling author, the amazing, the incredible David Baldacci, with his new release, To Die For, part of the 620 Man series. Welcome, David.
Thank you very much. It's great to be here.
Oh my gosh, this is a dream come true to have you here. So could you start us off before I start getting really crazy with the questions? Could you start us off with a quick overview of what To Die For is about?
Yeah. So Travis Devine is a 620 man, and he's called that because in the first novel, he took the 620 train into Manhattan every day from Westchester to work in Wall Street. He's an ex-Army Ranger. He left the Army under a black cloud. He'd much rather be in the Army, but he couldn't stay. Some of it was his fault. So he was given an ultimatum by Homeland Security in the first 620 man novel. Either come to work for us or you go to Leavenworth for like 40 years. So he went with them instead. And in this novel, To Die For, he's got two problems. One is in the last book, The Edge, the second 620 man, there was a person called the girl in the train, that's her euphemism, who wants to kill him. She's been hired to take him out, and she's still there. So he flies out to Seattle to be a bodyguard for a little girl named Betsy Odom. She's 12. She just lost her parents mysteriously. Her uncle is a criminal. He's being prosecuted by the feds. He wants to adopt her. The feds don't want him to, so he's there to protect her. And while the girl on the train is still coming. And this is a novel where Devine has no idea who's really on his side or not. It's like he's working with other agencies. They say they're his friend, but they do things that show they're really not his friend. People lie to him. So he doesn't know who to trust anymore. And his big problem is that he has a great skill set. He can kill people. He can travel around the world and do amazing things. He has no clue how to handle a 12-year-old girl. I mean, it's just, that's his kryptonite. But he has to establish a relationship with her. She is brassy and confident and bold, and she, talks like a sailor sometimes, but that's to hide up the fact that she's a 12-year-old girl who's been traumatized and she's scared and she doesn't know what to do. And he has got to get through to her at some point so they can establish a bond of trust. And that really, quite frankly, is his hardest mission in the entire book. But allowed me to also grow his character, because in this novel, you see another side of Devine that you didn't see in the other books because he didn't need to show it in those other books. So that's where we stand right now in To Die For.
You touched on something I absolutely love, and I think there's some dialogue about this in the story, that she's 12 going on 42, right? And that the empathy with which Travis just goes through this entire plot with his heart in the hands of this little girl who not only, as you said, is suffering severe trauma, but she's also kind of alone in the world on top of that. And then she's just dealing with the fact of being a 12-year-old girl and her body's changing and this and that. And the empathy with which you treated that and the sweetness was so powerful to see the foil in this one character, that if he has to kill you, he will, and he will do it quickly and efficiently. But he worries and has heartburn over things that he might have said to her. And did I word that the right way? Did she take that the right way? How hard was that for you to get into those kind of dialogue pieces?
Yeah, I mean, I raised a daughter. She's in her 30s now, but she was 12 and 13. And I remember those years vividly. They're indelibly imprinted on my mind. While I never had anything approaching what Devine is dealing with and what Betsy was dealing with, there were intimate moments where I needed to find another gear in myself to be able to deal with my daughter's problems and what she was confronting and the changes that were taking place in her life. And you sometimes you're capable of things you didn't think you would be capable of until you're required to be capable of it. And I think that's what happened with Devine. I also think that he sees a little bit of himself. He's a loner, he doesn't have any permanent roots. Neither does Betsy. Betsy's all over the place. She doesn't know where she's going to end up tomorrow. So in some ways they're like old souls, even though they're much apart in age. And I wanted, at least in this novel, for them to be able to trust each other at some point, because they didn't trust anybody else. Everybody else lied to them. And I wanted to get to the point where they came and reached common ground, because I needed something in the novel, because everything is so loose in this book. You don't know who to trust. I needed a little bit of a foundation that at least the reader could go, okay, I can't check any box off except that one. I can check that box off. I know that he's not going to do anything to hurt her. He's going to help her, and she's going to be safe. I'm going to rely on that, because if not, I'm going to be really upset. And then the rest of the stuff, I'm just going to sit back and see what happens, because I have no clue about what's going to happen to any of the other people in this novel. So that's really that was my game plan in putting this whole thing together. And again, it grows organically. I didn't have all the answers when I first sat down to write this novel. It had to grow. I had to meet these people. I had to see what Betsy was like. I had to see how Devine would react to her before I could really, firm up their relationship. It's not something that was going to happen on the first day.
And it was so incredibly well done, because we see other people around Betsy, and there's other women around Betsy. And based on, suppositions that we all make sometimes, you would assume that it's the women who are going to be able to get through to her, and it's the women who are going to see her and understand her and empathize with her the most. But that's not necessarily the case.
No, everybody's different. Nobody's a monolith. Women are different, men are different. In this particular instance, some of the women that may have been able to form a bond with her, they had their own agendas. They had their own things they were dealing with. And so she wasn't really a top priority. I'm not saying they were bad people. I'm just saying that when you have a mission to do, you focus on the mission. And some other things may fall by the wayside. Devine was in the position where he didn't know what the hell was going on. And so he focused more on her, one, because that empathy, it's the correct word. You felt the empathy. He felt sorry for her. And he wanted to help her. At the very beginning of the novel, he went out and he did his job. He took her where he needed to go. He could have left and just gone on, but he didn't, because he made the decision he could not leave her like this. It was not right. And I think, maybe his time in the military, where you have missions, you want to do the right thing, you want to see it through, you don't want to stop halfway and just check out, served him well in this. And he was not going to leave until he knew that things were right with her. So that's what he did.
And when you bring up the military, that concept of no man left behind, in this case, no little girl left behind, was very, very powerful. She becomes almost part of his team through this story. And the other great thing that was the way that he respects her too. He doesn't just write her off as it's a 12-year-old kid and I'm not even going to try. He sees who she is. He values her and respects her. And that gets to another thing that I wanted to chat with you about, our friend Travis. He is a really good guy. He is that person who has a moral compass, and you can set your watch by it. He is always on true north. Where was the inspiration? Where'd you get inspiration for Travis?
I think it came from, I know a lot of people who served in the military. My dad was in the military. 5 of my uncles were in the military. And there was that sense of purpose, focus, dedication, mission, seeing things through. When you volunteer and to serve your country in uniform, knowing you could be in harm's way and you could be killed, that's quite a statement to make about yourself, that you believe in something more than yourself, and you believe in the greater good for the country. And I like characters that are complex, and I make Devine complex, not in the fact that, you're right, he is a good guy and he has his true north, and he's never going to go out and do a really bad thing to somebody who doesn't deserve it. But you can make him complex in other ways about how he reacts with nuances to certain situations. How he deals with people he knows is lying to them, how he deals with people he thinks might be an enemy, but maybe he can make them into an ally. That's all levels of complexity. But I like the fact that at least with Devine, you know what you're going to get. I'm not going to throw you a curveball there and he's going to turn out to be a bad guy, because that would not be what I wanted him to represent. He's got enough crap flying around his world anyway, so making him ambiguous about who he actually is, not really what I wanted to do with him. He's like an arrow you let loose. He's going to shoot through the air through all the stuff, and at some point he is going to hit the target without deviating anyplace else. And he may take a lot of punishment along the way, but at the end of the day, he's going to get to where he needs to go.
in reflecting after finishing reading the story and looking back over the 3 books, he's such a breath of fresh air in many ways, because I think, we've gotten to a point in society where we love the jaded hero, we love the flawed hero, we love the complex hero who does things that we don't like, but maybe they come back around in the end. And Travis is such a diamond right now, because it's just so great to immerse yourself in someone you're safe with emotionally. I know that sounds odd, but from the reader perspective, to go somewhere on an adventure with someone who is just that safe and reliable is absolutely awesome.
No, it is. And I think in this day and age in particular, you need sort of that grounding, that foundation, because, we hear about wonderful people who've done wonderful things, and all of a sudden you're like, oh my God, they did what? They've been arrested for what? And then you're just crushed by that. It's like, is there any good left in the world? Well, Devine represents, yes, there is some good left in the world. Do not lose faith, because there are people out there who actually want to do the right thing, and will actually, back up their words with action. It's easy to talk a good game. It's much harder to walk that game. And he's the guy that will walk the good game and, put his life on the line. Again, with Betsy, he knows that if he hangs out there, it may cost him his life. The title is To Die For. When you read the book, you understand where that comes from. He made an agreement, with someone that he would lay down his life for Betsy, if it came to it. And that's, a lot of people will think they could do something like that, but when you actually are called upon to do it, it's a little bit different. And he's just a stand-up guy. I like writing about him, because I put him through some terrible situations. I feel badly about that. But he is who he is.
And the really fun piece of this story is the girl on the train as well. I mean, there's so many layers. You gave us the massive onion full of layers of who's who, what's what, where are the motives, where's it going? But the girl on the train is this very dark satin, silky thread that keeps running through. What was the inspiration for her?
Yeah, when I first thought about her, when she was on the train in Europe and she had her team there and they wanted to kill him, and then you never really see her in the Edge other than that. I wasn't sure at that point what I was going to do with her. Was I going to play it straight, and she is who she is, and you're going to have the battle of good versus evil? Then when I sat down to put together To Die For, I was like, that's an easy way out. Let me make it a little more nuanced than that. Because I would think that anybody who would go into a job like that is not going to be a simple person. They're going to be a complicated person. So let me investigate how she got to be who she is. What made her do this sort of thing that kind of out of the ordinary. You're a mercenary. And so once I sort of invented her backstory and got to know her a little bit better, I thought I can take her in another direction. I can make this a lot more complicated. And let's see how Devine deals with this. And let me get her on the playing field and let's see what can be worked out. And for me, that was a lot more fun than just playing it straight. But then that grew organically. It wasn't like I had that thought out completely when The Edge was done. I didn't have it thought out completely when I started To Die For, but I always like to let things play out on the pages a little bit before I make commitments that are firm and unyielding. That's why I don't do these detailed outlines. I never stick to them anyway. So what's the point? And I like to be immersed in the story. When I'm immersed in actually writing the story, that's where I make my best decisions, because things matter. My decisions matter. And an outline, when I might write the outline months before I write the book, who cares? I mean, I could just say, well, he's going to do something interesting, and I'll think about it later. Okay. That's like, where do you think, Tom Brady is most focused on when he was playing? In practice, where nobody was going to touch him, or in a game where 11 guys wanted to kill him? In the game. And so me, in the pages, that's where I'm the most focused. I see the whole field. I see all possibilities. I never see that in the outline because the urgency isn't there. So her evolution of the character came out while I was writing this novel, and I began to see the possibilities.
Well, she's absolutely, in my opinion, an iconic character. The nuance that you put into her, the complexities, the realism, she is just one of those characters that I absolutely adore and will always adore for so many reasons. But one of the things that, as we talk about the plot and the pacing, and this is just, it grabs you, takes your breath away in the first chapter, and then that's just it. We're on a train ride that's unyielding until the last word. There's a thing about thrillers, and why we want to go to them. And so many people have opined on this and written on it. That concept that perhaps mankind is so far removed from those type of fast-paced threats that are really our origin as a species, that we want to somehow revisit it in a safe way. Is that what you think draws us to this genre, or what do you think it is?
I think it's a lot of that. I mean, we have the amygdala glands, the cavemen had them, the fight or flight, and we don't really need them anymore, because I'm pretty sure when I leave the building today, a T-Rex is not going to come after me. I'm pretty certain about that, but we still have them. So I think that people like the safe scare. I mean, why do people love documentaries and books about serial killers? Because it's fascinating. You're looking at a human being who looks like me, looks like you, but they kill 47 people, and you think to yourself, people are going to be fascinated by how in the world did that happen? I've got to read about this to see what makes me not that, and what makes that not me. And so it's a safe scare. It's like the little kid who doesn't want to look under the bed, but wants to look under the bed for the boogeyman. You want to read about Ted Bundy. You never want to meet him, but you want to read about him. And the same thing, I think, with thrillers, where you're put into a situation outside of the norm, outside of any experience you may have, hopefully. But at the same time, I think there's another element to it too. That people try to get from fiction what they can't get out of real life, and that is resolution, accountability, justice, closure. Those things are often missing in real life. And in thrillers, particularly in To Die For, you get all four of those things in this novel, where people are held accountable, you get closure, there's a finality to the story, and there's hope moving forward, going on. But there is justice. People who have done bad things are punished, which, quite frankly, these days, you don't see that as much as we would like to. So I think they fulfill that void that we have in real life. And I think that's why they're so popular.
I do too. And I do think that sense, and you're absolutely right. Our world has changed drastically, even over our lifespans, of what we perceived as justice, whether we perceived our system was capable of it. Right. And like you said, there's so many times that you turn around in the news and say, oh my gosh, that person did what? And then sometimes you look at the punishment for those crimes and you think, well, wait a minute. Is that a just punishment? And through art, you can give us what the real world that's full of flawed people can't, which is that just happy ending. So thank you for your entire body of work. Thank you for giving us these stories, for taking us safely on these journeys and helping us to look at ourselves and look at the world around us.
I appreciate it very much. I always love talking to people who love books, and that's certainly you. And it's a pleasure. It's a real pleasure.
Now, one more question I do want to ask you, as much as your books have been absolutely pivotal in so many people's lives, there's something else that you do, that you and your wife do. And I was hoping you could tell us a little bit more about the Wish You Well Foundation.
Absolutely. My wife and I founded it about 23 years ago, and we fund literacy programs, initiatives, and organizations across all 50 states. We've poured millions of dollars into it. And our mission is to eradicate illiteracy in the U.S., and there's a number of reasons for that. One is you're never going to be able to achieve your full economic potential without high reading skills, particularly in the day and age we live in now. And secondly, illiteracy is tied to every social ill we have, from homelessness to hunger to poverty to crime. Those things go hand in hand for various reasons, but if you think about it, it's pretty obvious why. If you can't reach your economic potential, lots of bad things happen. On the other side, reading is like weightlifting for your brain. Not just your brain, but your soul. It makes all of it stronger. Readers are more empathetic. They're more tolerant. They're less judgmental. If you get rid of ignorance, which reading can do, then guess what falls away? Intolerance falls away as well. I grew up in Jim Crow, Virginia, and racism all around me. I could have grown up like that. And I never traveled outside of Virginia as a child. I didn't have a chance to do that. But I like to say I traveled the world without a plane ticket or passport because I went to the library and checked out books. So I read about people from all over the world who didn't look, pray, speak, learn like me, but we shared a common core of humanity. So for me, my ignorance is gone. My intolerance is gone. There was no boogeyman anybody could point to make me afraid of them because I'd met them on the pages. So that wasn't going to work. So it enhanced my humanity. Reading enhances your humanity and makes you more empathetic, which is best human attribute there is. Why? Because it leads to all the other best of human attributes. If you're empathetic, it makes you a better human being. So reading helps you in your economic life. Reading helps you in your moral life. So that's what we're going to do with the Wish You Well Foundation. It's just to help people be better, because if people are better readers, they're going to be better people, and it's going to be a better world.
Absolutely beautiful statement. Thank you so much for helping us with our humanity. I said I wasn't going to fangirl. I said I wasn't going to get crazy, but I'm going to slip one more question if it's okay.
Yes.
What do you do to decompress when you're so busy putting all these words on the page to take our breath away? What do you do to get your breath back?
I read a lot, but I like to travel, and I like to be on the water. We have a lake house that we spend a good part of the summer. And for me, decompressing is going out on a paddleboard or going out in a sailboat. And just, I remember when I was down there for the last time before the summer ended, I was out at one of our sea-doos. It's like a motorcycle on water. And we have some neighbors who know who I am. Everybody down there knows who I am. But I was just flying out on the sea-doo. I was leaning back. I was just looking at the sky. And as I looked over, they were all like clapping, to see me sort of relaxing and being just free for a little bit, and enjoying the world. So I take those small moments, but they're big for me. And small moments can have a huge impact on you. It's really about being in the moment, and not worrying about what's going to come.
Speaking of what's going to come, we do want you to be in the moment. We do want you to enjoy. We don't want you to have to worry about what's to come. But of course, all of us readers all want to know what's next to come. And in order to do that, where is the best place for your fans to find you? And what's coming next?
Yeah, they can go to davidbaldacci.com, and that will list all the books and what's going on in my life and touring and all that stuff. We're going to talk about some of the film stuff. I've sold 4 series in the last year. This 620 Man is now at Netflix for a series of movies. I just read the first script of that one. And Memory Man and Atlee Pine are at Amazon, and the Camel Club are at NBC Universal. So they're working hard. They all have writers and showrunners attached. So you might see some of that stuff next year, which would be kind of cool. So this spring, a book is coming out called Strangers in Time. And it's set in 1944 in London during the war. And it's 3 people involved in the story. It's a little boy in the East End who has very little. It's a girl in the West End who has everything, and a bookseller in the Strand who has lost a lot in the war. And during the course of the novel, the boy loses what little he has. The girl from Chelsea loses everything she had. And the 3 of them have to come together to survive the war. So it's Strangers in Time. So that'll be out in April.
It sounds absolutely phenomenal. That time period is so pivotal in human history. I can only imagine what you're going to bring to it, because again, nuance, empathy, it's all what you do. So I cannot wait. Thank you, David, for your body of work. Thank you for what you and your wife have done to help promote literacy. And thank you for being here today.
I enjoyed it very much. Thank you for having me.
And thank you all for joining us on this episode of Twisted Passages. We hope to see you next time.